On Apple operating systems like iOS, macOS, tabletOS, and watchOS, there's a built-in visual workflow application called Shortcuts. It actually used to be called Workflows. So what this allows you to do is instead of programming, you can do programming-like activities with a visual workflow designer. So this allows you to have device and OS and application inputs and outputs that work together. So if this happens, then do Y. So you can build a very rich series of interactions that might be custom to your use cases for anything. You can even build home and workplace automations where the devices connected in this Apple ecosystem can react to each other based on the automation. So think of something that you might want to occur based on temporal or time-based information. I want these series of things to occur with my Apple connected ecosystem devices at this time of day. I want certain things to occur based on location information. Am I arriving or leaving work or home? And then you can use sensor information. Is my phone low on battery? Is it on a particular Wi-Fi connection? Did my phone detect a doorbell? So you can react to all of this. You can adjust temperatures on thermostats, turn on, turn off smart and connected devices, send audio, text to things like HomePods, very rich interactions on the automation side. And then for the shortcuts, you can actually perform scripting and build up very layered interactions. So to get the advanced scripting, you can even SSH for the technical people. You can SSH with remote function calling if you think of the power of that. But you can also visually lay out certain steps, which I'll show you here, which in this Cloud Agent Mania, what we're going to do here is we're going to get an Apple iPhone using Siri to dictate what we say to text. So it's going to have speech to text. It's going to use the on-chip, on-device kind of interactions. Apple iPhones have special chips for AI and ML. And then it's going to dictate the text and then go from speech to text. It's going to URL encode that text. That makes it safe to put in a URL as a query string parameter. If you've ever seen something like question mark A equals B in a URL, that's called the query string parameter. And then we're going to call a URL, which is a web service endpoint. So this is a Google Cloud remotely hosted cloud serverless endpoint. So this is an endpoint. It's a virtual server essentially that we don't have to pay for when we're not using it. So instead of paying a monthly fee for a certain server, a certain number of servers, these cloud serverless functions essentially offer near infinite scaling for various purposes. So if you're testing something out like this and it doesn't have constant traffic, you're not paying for when something's not used. It's very minimal. You don't have to worry about the infrastructure, the cost, the setup. It's super easy to set up. And then in a production-like workflow, if you have traffic to a URL, to a web service, to an API that is very burstable or not consistent over days, over times in the day, this allows you to very quickly ramp up to invocations of this endpoint or server, where you could be getting no traffic to little traffic to quite a lot of traffic, and you don't have to worry about the scale up, scale down of the infrastructure, and it'll take care of that. And the way you're billed is you're just billed by the invocation and invocation time. So if nothing's getting used, you're not getting billed. So it's very efficient. So we have a Google Cloud Run serverless function that's hosted in Google Cloud. And then that's performing certain activities with the Google Generative AI SDK for Gemini. So Gemini, as an LLM model, as it got into 2.0 and greater models, we're using a Flash model for Gemini in our web service. So there's associated code with this video that is meant to go along with it. That code is using the Generative AI SDK. Then we're asking Gemini with a system prompt. So this is telling Gemini how we want it to behave. We want it to be witty and funny and basically a philosopher comedian. But if we ask it anything that is factual in basis, that we need certain information, that it should give us the information before it provides any commentary. So that's all the web service does. It's open-ended in this way, but we added an additional capability what's called function calling, sometimes it's called a tool, our call to Gemini is augmented with the power of Google search. So large language models and kind of AI systems largely have a corpus or data set that's fixed at a point in time. So imagine that the AI model learns all this information up to a certain point in time because it has to collect all this data, be trained, etc. So what we're doing is we're augmenting that with the ability to, in real time, get results from Google. So this is a tool that's built into the generative AI SDK for Gemini that just allows you to have Google search results as part of the Gemini capabilities through what's called a tool and function calling. And so we're just calling this endpoint. We're able to leverage all that functionality, and then we're calling the endpoint. It's taking the text that we spoke, passing it into our endpoint, running any logic that we want. We just happen to be doing this generative AI logic. And then this particular card setup that you see in Shortcuts app, it's very reminiscent of an application called HyperCard. So if you're not familiar with HyperCard, go search on Google and the internet for the history of HyperCard. It's pretty entertaining and amusing, and you'll see a lot of those concepts get recreated over time. And Shortcuts is no exception. So you have these cards, which like dictate text is a card, the URL is one, all these actions and capabilities that you configure. So you can think of them as cards. Visually, they're laid out from top to bottom, so it goes from one step to the next. And then you set these all up, and they have certain functionality they provide to you. So we're doing these steps. We're making that remote call to a URL. So this is an HTTP GET to a web service URL that responds in JSON. Application JSON is the content type. So that's JavaScript object notation, and it's just the format of the response. So it is essentially key value pairs, which think about that as a property and then the value of that property. So first name would be the value of that would be somebody's first name, last name, or surname. If that was a property or key, that would be somebody's last name or surname as the value. So we get that back as what's called a dictionary. And then this capability in Shortcuts, it can parse JSON dictionaries from the remote URL. So you can visit a particular URL, make a web service call, and then parse those responses or that response into a dictionary, and then we're going to get particular value. So we're going to get the key that's called text. It could be first name, it could be last name, it could be surname if that's what's coming back in the data. But we know the way that we created our function was that the response from this cloud run function is going to return JSON with a property called text with the value from Gemini in that particular value for text. So then it's going to read that and then it's going to speak it. So we're getting the iPhone to use its speech-to-text capabilities. That's with the built-in AI ML chips as well as Siri. We're dictating what we're saying to text, encoding that, making an API call to a cloud serverless function hosted in Google Cloud Run Functions. We're getting a JSON response based on the Google Gemini 2.0 Flash model. Very fast. We're using that model because it has fast inference time. It's very affordable. And for an interaction like this, where we want it to be fast and snappy, it's very good. And then we're getting the response from a text key or property, and then we're having Siri read that. So without further ado.
Sure, here is a joke about tires. Why did a bicycle fall over? Because it was too tired. All right, here are a few more tire-related jokes to keep you rolling. Why did the spare tire go to therapy? It had issues with feeling left out. What's a tire's favorite type of music? Rhythm and blues.
Alright, here's your rap and a philosophical head-scratcher. Weather rap for Austin. Yo, it's March the 9th, feel the sun's grace. 61 degrees in this chill place. But hold up, tomorrow's gonna flip. 80 degrees, gonna give you the slip. From cool to warm, that's how we roll. Austin weather, plays with your soul. Humanity's perplexity. The most perplexing thing about humanity is our persistent need to rank and categorize everything, from music to people. Despite the inherent subjectivity and the potential for overlooking hidden talents and profound contributions,